Do you know what's a sleeping cow? A bulldozer. Do you know why keyboards on computers never sleep? They have 2 shifts. I don't know. These are all so dumb. One of my kids took one of the scooters into bed. Do you know why? Didn't want to sleepwalk.
Crash, great.
No, but in all seriousness, for the last 20 years, I've done nutritional coaching, given a lot of lectures, and probably, if not the second most common question I always get is, how do I sleep better? It's a consistent thing that people are asking and needing help with. So I figured out might as well do a video. The challenge is with that question, like any nutritional question you find information online, is that the person replying to that question doesn't know you. Like, what's your lifestyle? What's happening in your life? And what's your physical unique features? And what's your blood work? And I don't know anything about you, honestly. So like, how do I know how to help you sleep better? So usually to answer these questions in talks, I figured out a system where I use a martial arts, let's say jiu-jitsu, and I use the belt system to explain some like priorities, moving from the most likely to work and beginner stuff to the most advanced stuff as you progress in your kind of sleep evolution, if you may. And just like in martial arts, the white belt is actually more important than the black belt in a way that like you have to have the basics in order to move on to the next level. But then every level you become more of a ninja. So there's value in every step, but never forget the previous steps, if that makes sense. So let's get started with the white belt. So if I could only say you have to do one thing to sleep better, it's consistency. It's the most important thing you can do to have a good sleep quality is to go to bed roughly at the same time and wake up roughly at the same time. So keeping it consistent. Ideally with sunrise, sunset, but like it's most important that you keep it consistent, even if you go bed late and wake up late. And later when we go to the more advanced tips, like even if you do all the supplements I'll tell you could take, if you travel, have jet lag, and suddenly your sleep rhythm changes, it will take you a few days to get adjusted. Now, those supplements later might help you get adjusted faster, but you're still gonna suck at sleep for a day or two. So this is the most important thing to do, is to be consistent. Okay, next belt, blue belt. It is to have an active morning. Ideally, expose yourself to sunlight early in the day and your skin too. Generally, temperature and light are the most powerful evolutionary mechanisms to sleep and energy. It's because like we've been exposed to those things for a long time. So as temperatures rise and go down, as there's more light or less light, our body will start this super complicated mechanism. And we can try to explain what that mechanism is, but it's evolutionarily wired in us to be sleepier or more energized. So in the morning, do not look at your phone or stay in bed. Get out, get into sunlight, fresh air, and weirdly, like having a little bit of cold exposure. You don't have to do a cold plunge, but just going outside, getting fresh air will help you in a cooler weather, and then you can come back inside. It will help you sleep better. Now, I could talk about the evening, the opposites, as you want to avoid blue light, like I'm wearing blue light blockers, you could take a hot bath, but the morning is actually more important than the evening. If you do the morning right, I think the evening sleep will be a lot simpler. Again, remembering to go to bed roughly always at the same time. Moving on to the purple belt. Purple belt is probably you've practiced this thing for a while, you have a good rhythm. That's when you can start looking at your bedroom sleep hygiene. And there's a lot of elements here that you should do, but it's very important that the room is dark, it is cold, and it's probably also quiet in the right way. You could use white noise machines and other things like that. But the most important things is that you have a really dark room that's really cold. And now you could have a good pillow, you could have bed sheets that breathe well, those are helpful. And there's a lot of information about them too, if you want to search online. And you could also work on like grounding your bed. You could do these things, but just make sure that temperature and light are really well taken care of. And then you can experiment with the other stuff. Now, I've used a bed mattress that cools my bed for a long time. And if you sleep with someone who has a different temperature preference than you, I would say generally that can be a helpful tool. But coming from Finland, I would say that everybody should sleep in a cold room with a warm blanket. You can also open the windows and improve the air quality just before going to bed. That's very like a German Austrian thing to do, but it's helpful for everyone. Just remember, when you start adjusting your sleep hygiene in your room, just make sure the basics are there, but don't get obsessed. I know people who don't see the forest from the trees. And what I mean with this is that they think that like, if it's just not perfect, the room, they can't sleep. So they go to a hotel room or they're traveling and then they can't sleep because it's just not perfect. And I think that's actually more of a mental block than anything else. Okay, now you're at brown belt. Brown belt is basically like almost like a black belt, to be honest. It's just like on their way there, and it's more like polishing certain things, and it's a matter of time until the brown belt becomes a black belt. But you're not quite there yet. And that means like now you're introducing supplements, which by the way means that you can go a whole list of things to do before you start taking any supplements. And I find that usually people who want to improve their sleep and they have horrible sleep routines and sleep hygienes, and they're not active in the morning and they don't have sunlight exposure, they want to get one supplement that helps them sleep better, and they go to Amazon or they see an ad on Instagram and they buy it. Do not do that. Start with the basics. Once you've done all the basics, now you can start adjusting things such as supplement. The difference between brown belt and black belt to me is that you shouldn't rely on supplements. Instead, you should rely on foods that have functional benefits. And what do I mean with that is generally you are products that have a nutritional facts panel, and black belts should take products that have a supplement facts panel. The other way to think about it is that a brown belt should start with things that are safe for pregnant people. Even if you're not pregnant, I'm not pregnant, but I still like recommend starting with stuff that are safe year round versus starting with stuff that you have to cycle in and out, or there's more of a risk of taking them too much, if that makes sense. So what are those things? Chamomile tea, one of the easiest things to start with. Peppermint essential oils, amazing. Lavender. And on the herbal side, ashwagandha and reishi are some of the safest things to take. So if you're like pregnant, like my wife, she will still drink reishi, but she might not take some of the other more stronger supplements we'll get into later. These are amazing things because they kind of work your body in a holistic, gentle sense, and they will give you some sleep support. They're not a sleeping pill. They will not work as fast as a Xanax, but they will offer you general balance within your body, especially if you're stressed. One thing I don't see a lot of people talking about in this category is a lemon balm. I think it's an amazing, safe and powerful evening sleep time herbal medicine. And as mentioned, the black belt is when you're taking these more stronger supplements or certain foods that are not meant to be taken year round, like valeriana. You might have heard things like kava kava or valeriana for sleep. Those are things that you should probably cycle in and out, or there's a little bit of a risk of taking them too much. There are also things that probably are not safe for pregnant women, which again kind of shows the risk-reward ratio of those products. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take them. There's many moves in martial arts that a black belt person will use that are still effective, but you just need to know when to use them. They're not the bread and butter. On the supplement side, taking high doses of L-theanine, L-tryptophan, GABA might be things that are on the stack. Also playing with magnesium. Not to say that magnesium isn't safe. It's obviously something, critical micronutrient we take all the time, and it serves many body functions. So generally you should be taking magnesium. But if you're taking magnesium for sleep in higher doses, there are issues of like diarrhea and all these kinds of things. So if you're taking magnesium as part of a multivitamin or a small dose, safe, go ahead. But if you're starting to take high doses of magnesium, or I guess omega-3 fatty acids maybe fall into that category too, then you got to a little bit know what you're doing if you're taking like 5 times the dose of what's recommended in the bottle. One supplement I don't hear that many people talking about, but I think that's pretty proven for nighttime stacks, is glycine. And one herb that I feel like not enough many people talk about in this category is passion flower. It's an amazing nighttime medicine. But again, like the other ones, you kind of have to probably rotate in and out of it. But glycine and passion flower should be probably in this category if you're like a biohacker and you're interested in improving your sleep quality. So at least trying those things out. Okay, so that's white, blue, purple, brown, and black. Wherever you are, try moving one step further in your sleep progress. But there are 4 things 4 things that I get constantly asked about if I ever talk about sleep in lectures or whatnot. And those are caffeine, alcohol, weed, and melatonin. So I want to cover those. Those are kind of X factors. I didn't want to put them in any of those belts, but they are things that we should be aware of as we talk about sleep. And I want to cover them one by one and the pros and cons of using each one for sleep. Starting with coffee. The rule of thumb I would say is that 1 cup of coffee is okay, 2 cups some days, 3 cups never. And as far as timing goes, before 10 a.m., you should be solid. Sometimes you can drink 1 before noon, and you should never drink coffee after 2. If you're on the sensitive side, lean towards even half of that. So let's say instead of a cup of coffee, try having decaf or half-calf caffeine. And if you're really sensitive, instead of 10 a.m., try to have your 1 cup of coffee before 8 a.m. And the reason for this is coffee is a central nervous system stimulant, and it has a pretty long half-life. That means that it takes a while before it leaves the body, and it can kind of block your natural sleep mechanics from starting to work. So coffee itself in the morning is not negative, but taking too much coffee and too late in the day can be negative. You can use supplements like L-theanine or functional mushrooms to combat some of those negative effects, but it will still attach to this certain receptor in a certain way nevertheless. Now, what might be interesting also to figure out how you process caffeine. If you do kind of DNA and genetic testing, you can find out if you flush them easy or not. But honestly, you probably already know based on your relationship with caffeine, if you're a sensitive person to caffeine or not. I personally am not, but you might be. So just lean on the lighter side. And by the way, this is not just about coffee. This also includes energy drinks and tea. So if you're really sensitive, I would probably limit to 1 cup of matcha tea or half-calf coffee. And that will be your upper limit, and you would have it before 8 a.m., latest by 10. Next one is alcohol. Alcohol is somewhat similar to coffee, is that it's more of a question of how much and when. But generally, if you measure your sleep and you track your sleep, you realize that alcohol is one of the worst things you can do for sleep. Even if you feel groggy after drinking and you go to bed, you think you fall asleep faster. That might be the case, but actually if you track your sleep, you had a really restless night. So your heart rate is up, and generally the quality of sleep you get is horrible. So generally, alcohol is not great. And similar to caffeine, you want to actually have it earlier in the day. So if you want to drink, I almost encourage you to drink earlier in the day. And the rule with alcohol is somewhat similar to the caffeine part and coffee part, is 1 serving of alcohol is probably fine, 2 servings, sometimes 3 servings, never. And serving alcohol, by the way, is not the same as a big glass of wine. So the amount of glass impacts the official servings of alcohol. And when to have it, I would probably recommend having it weirdly before noon, but definitely before 4 p.m., assuming that you go to bed around 10 p.m. Then weed. Weed is similar to alcohol, that a lot of people use weed to fall asleep better. They feel restless, their mind is restless, their body's restless, and they use weed to fall asleep. But actually the end outcome is that they sleep worse. You can even stop dreaming with weed. Without going into the specific actions of that, I would directly recommend you not using marijuana if your goal is to sleep better, unless you're in pain. I think the one exception here is either with CBD creams or other products. If you have truly pain and that pain is so bad that it prevents you from falling asleep, then maybe marijuana might be a more natural way to dose yourself. But in general, for sleep quality and sleeping better, whatever the marketers say the strain is, it's probably a negative to sleep. If you want to use marijuana for sleep, similar to alcohol and caffeine, try use very little and kind of like a puff after work or something. And I generally like edibles better than smoking. I don't like smoke in my lungs, but in this use case, smoking would be the way to go, and smoking very little a few hours before bed to just calm your mind, and starting some other form of a evening routine that might involve a bath, reading a book, some other ways of relaxing. And then by the time you're actually going to bed, it's more or less out of your system. The last is melatonin. I hear a lot of people take melatonin. It's almost every sleep supplement you can get has melatonin. I generally say avoid melatonin. Melatonin is very important for us. It's actually kind of a a super compound in a way, but there is a risk of taking it regularly for your natural sleep progression. And if you have to rely on melatonin on even half regular basis, that's probably suboptimal. So if you do take melatonin, it's probably helpful when you change time zones. So even before you travel, not when you land, it's trying to move your circadian rhythm closer to the cadence of your new destination. So when we mentioned as the absolute core function is regular sleep schedule, but if you travel, that gets forced upon you to be slightly different. In that case, you could use maybe melatonin. And if you use melatonin, I actually take way more than what they recommend. You can even take 100 milligrams, but like I generally say is 10 to 20 milligrams instead of, let's say, 5. So you can take more, but less often, and mostly around travel. And almost think of it like medicine, and you don't want to look at it as a natural compound, even though you could argue that it is, but instead using it sparingly.
And as a bonus, you can also use movement for better sleep and more energy. I'm not an expert in movement, so I wanted to ask my friend Jason and Dina, who are the world's authorities and utmost experts in movement. Jason is the founder of Acro Yoga, on a few small things you can do to sleep better by using movement.
Perfect. Thank you, Darryl. So I'll take the morning practice. One of the things that you can do in the morning to get more energy is go upside down. Okay, so to start, you put 2 chairs up against the wall and you want to put them the distance of your shoulders. You can grab the legs with your fingers pointing down, place the shoulders here, and then just jump up. You got the wall behind you to catch you. So once you touch the wall, you know you're going to be fine. You could either be very aggressive and pushing a lot, or you could relax and regain a lot of space in your neck and your upper body. I very strategically placed a yoga mat here, so when I come down, I can do a child's pose. What child's pose does is it helps me integrate the benefits of the practice.
And this is what you do to get a good night's rest. Bring one leg up to your chest, and with the opposite arm, you bring it across your body, doing your best to keep your shoulder planted on the ground and bringing that knee as close to the floor as possible. Bonus is you turn your head to the opposite side so you get a nice full body stretch and twist. Twisting also helps detoxify the organs. So we hold this with 10 deep slow breaths, deep diaphragmatic breathing. You'll start to notice your body just melting and relaxing, letting go of any tension in the hip.
So that was it. Hopefully that was helpful. Leave a comment below what is your favorite tip, or if you have another tip that I didn't mention that the community watching these videos could leverage. Generally, I try to make it more structured that different people can benefit from it. I would have made just the hardcore biohacker video that has every tincture in the world, but sometimes those people forget the basics. So that's why I like to teach it this way, that like where to start and how to evolve. And sometimes, frankly, myself, especially now with kids, I have to forget about all these supplements and hardcore hacks and go back to the basics, because those are not in order before I start taking high doses of glycine and passion flower. Hopefully that was helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber, and see you in the next video.